Hello, and welcome to Bean Steamers for a new installment. Today, we're going to talk about healthcare and hospitals. In other words, I get sick, I get sicker. So let me tell you a story. It's 100% true, and I'm not even going to change the names to protect the innocent. The story is about me. About 5 years ago, I was minding my own business one evening, leaving a building in a business area of the town that I reside in. There was a light rain coming down, and my right leg and knee had been bothering me for a few months, causing me to walk with a pronounced limp, sometimes having to resort to even using a cane. Well, as I left the building, I thought that it had been kind of careless for me not to bring a raincoat. My main concern then was just to get in my car, which was parked about 30 yards away. With about 15 yards to go, I felt a snap in my right knee, and suddenly I couldn't walk. The pain was pretty intense, and I couldn't even bear to put any pressure on my right foot. The first thought was that I had broken my leg. I'd recently heard about a friend that was mowing her grass, and as she stepped off the curb to turn the mower around, she broke her foot. It was one of these one in a million things. As I stood there in the rain, my only thought was to get to my car and to get home, albeit with a broken leg. I finally hopped on one leg, on my left leg, to the car and drove home using my left foot for the gas and the brake instead of the right. Not my safest journey ever. I finally got home, and I told myself that if I didn't feel better in the morning, I would, rather begrudgingly, go to the hospital. Well, the next morning it wasn't any better. In fact, it may have even been a little worse. I tried to figure out what had caused this dilemma, and it finally hit me. Too many years of a Gibson Les Paul pumped through a Marshall stack that was dimed. No, wait, that's my hearing. It has nothing to do with my leg. Never mind. Anyway, my long-suffering wife drove me to the local hospital. When I got to the desk, the nurse asked me what was wrong, and I replied rather sheepishly, I thought I had broken my leg. Well, at this point, I want to tell you something about the insurance coverage that I had at the time. This was pre-Medicare, so I was providing my own insurance. The monthly premium was $455 a month. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but this was a number of years ago. It was quite a lot of money for 1 month of health insurance. For this amount, I had a $10,000 deductible with an 80-20 split after the deductible was met. Oh yeah, and I had no prescription coverage whatsoever. The insurance was, for all practical purposes, a major medical policy, really only benefiting me if I had a spine transplant or something like that. This was not one of those times, and let me tell you, it doesn't take long to rack up $10,000 in costs at one of our fine hospitals here in the United States. All the while I was there waiting to be seen, I knew that somewhere in the hospital someone was doing something that was costing me money. I could feel the meter running, and I will swear that I could almost hear some administrator on the sixth floor laughing uncontrollably as the costs started to add up. I could picture him saying something like, "We've got a live one down in the ER." Well, several hours later, after all the x-rays and with several doctors consulting, each one now having a reason to bill me, all they could say was that I hadn't broken my leg and that I needed to go see a specialist across the street. No doubt a crony of theirs who wanted his slice of the pie as well. I was fitted with a Velcro leg brace that wouldn't stay in place and kept slipping down to my ankle. It had the value of about $2.95, but I'm sure I paid $250 for this contraption. The hospital is the only other place besides the armed forces that you can grossly overpay for cheap items. Remember the $400 hammer or the $300 ashtray? Add to that the $250 Velcro leg brace. Well, after muttering some semi-vile things under my breath, I went to see the specialist several days later, who promptly informed me that I had torn something that I can't remember and I needed surgery to clean it out, a procedure that I agreed to much too quickly. A while later, I had the procedure done and I went through weeks of physical therapy. The surgery was deemed a success, and thankfully, now I only had to walk on a cane 100% of the time. My friends told me that it was painful for them to see me walk, which helped me to fully appreciate the success of the surgery even more. Then the bills started to come in. I was absolutely dumbfounded. I had been charged thousands of dollars for items that very little explanation was attached to what these items were for. There's really nothing that accurately explained what these items actually were. One that sticks out of my mind yet today is I was charged $1,150 for what appeared to be something like a Spec Rack Tac Paracom. So, on the advice of valued friends, I took all the bills and I stuffed them into a drawer to be dealt with at a later date when I presumably could process all this with a clearer mind. Well, several months later, I limped into my home office with my trusty cane and proceeded to sort through all of this. I was appalled at the excess that had been heaped upon me by these doctors, hospitals, and insurance companies. One bill was from a practice that had supplied the anesthesiologist, or I should say, anesthesiologists. I had been billed by two separate anesthesiologists for $750 each. After looking at the itemized bill from the hospital that showed that I had been in the operating room for a total of 26 minutes, I called the office of these two gas passers, that's an old Army term, and politely explained that I had not been in the operating room all day long with doctors working in 4-hour shifts, and I was not paying for two anesthesiologists for a 26-minute surgery. They could take $375 each, or one of them was going to get stiffed. It didn't make any difference to me which one it was, but I was only paying $750. The person at the desk said I couldn't do that, and it was then that I came up with a comeback that worked beautifully. In fact, it worked so well that I used the same spiel with everyone that I spoke to over the next few weeks. I've even passed this little spiel on to others, and they have said nothing but good things back to me. Feel free to use this yourself, in fact, and pass it on if you want to. The secret to success of this little speech is to remain calm and to speak very softly. Never raise your voice and always sound in control, even if you're not. If you come off as angry, you're going to be perceived as just another unsatisfied customer, something these people deal with every day. You almost have to sell yourself, impressing upon the person that you're talking to that you are different. You're a serious force to be dealt with, and nothing does that like a calm, quiet, assured voice. When confronted with someone from a hospital, a doctor's office, or an insurance company telling you that you can't do what you are asking, stay silent for a few seconds. Don't breathe heavy or make a deep sighing sound. Don't smack your lips. Just be silent for a few seconds and then say very quietly, "Don't make me sue you." Juries love to see companies like yours take advantage of people like me. I'll get enough money from winning that suit that I'll pay the reduced portion of the bill that the courts mandate, put money in the bank, and go to Europe for 3 weeks. I have no qualms about doing that and will not hesitate to do so if you force me to. Virtually 100% of the time, everything is straightened out to my satisfaction within minutes. The rest of them had straightened out in a few days' time. Please note as well that if you're asking for something totally ridiculous, like getting your bill dismissed, this isn't going to work. But it sure helps when you just want the fat trimmed, bringing your bill down to a more manageable level. Trust me, the people in these offices know that their bills are really chubbed up. They'll lower it for you if you can impress upon them that you will pay a reasonable amount, not the excess, and that you're firm in your resolve. The next person I dealt with represented the group of surgeons that had actually performed the surgery, specifically just one of the partners in the group. Remember that 26-minute surgery? I was billed for $2,800. for the 26-minute job. Even rounding the 26 minutes up to 30, that's $5,600 an hour. That's a pretty good gig. Insurance paid a little over $2,000, and I had paid them $500 up until then with five $100 checks. They had sent me a letter that this was going to be turned over to collections due to non-payment. Well, at this point, I should tell you that after every check was cashed, I went to my bank's website and printed out a copy of the cashed check front and back. The telephone rings at the perpetrator's office of evil. Me. I've paid you $500 in five $100 checks over the months. Them. We have no record of that, sir, and we're going to be forced to turn this over to collection agency if you don't settle this account. Me. Let me read you something. Them. I don't have time to listen to you read anything. Me. It will only take 3 seconds. Them. Very well. Me. 09675-33012. Them. What's that? Me. That's the account number at your bank on the back of the canceled checks, just below where it says for deposit only. Why don't you verify that and figure out why I have your account number? Them. Me. After a few seconds of silence. Don't make me sue you. Juries love to see companies like yours take advantage of people like me. After a few days, they called and miraculously had located my payments. I had a balance of $300, which I promptly paid and bid them good riddance. You always hear about these big insurance, healthcare, and pharmaceutical companies, not to mention really anything medically related, having to change what they have to do in order to keep on the forefront of research and all that other malarkey. My suggestion is to get a really good accounting department. If they knew where the money was, their profits would soar by 35 to 40%. And then there are the pain people. I received a bill for $221 from a pain management company that I won't name. Suffice it to say that if you owned a company that manufactured ball bearings and you called the company the Ball Bearing Manufacturing Company, it shouldn't be too tough to figure out what the name of this pain company was. The first thing I did was to ask them who in the wide, wide world of sports they were, and what did they do in order to justify sending me a bill for $221. Sir, they said, we are a pain management company. There's a clue to their name. You figured it out yet? We are a pain management company that contracts to the hospital. When your pain medicine was received, it was done by a member of our staff, not a member of the hospital staff, and this is our fee for services rendered. Sounded like a pretty steep fee, but then I remembered the $250 Velcro leg brace, not to mention the $400 hammer. Okay, I said, have you run this through my insurance? No, they said rather curtly. Well, why don't you do that and send me a bill for the balance and I will gladly pay it. The conversation was ended with me foolishly thinking that this was resolved. In 30 days, I got a bill for $221. Same phone call, same conversation, no insurance claim yet. After 60 days and 90 days had passed from the original billing date, the only thing that was consistent was the same call with the same conversation. 120 days after the original billing date, I received a statement again for $221. This time, what was different was that the notice of the collections was attached. Once again, I dialed the phone. I knew the number by heart by now. And asked the age-old question, have you run this through my insurance company? No, sir. Why don't you pay the $221, and when your insurance claim comes through, we'll refund the difference to you. After a few seconds of silence, I said, don't make me sue you. Juries love to see, the spiel by now. I never got another bill from them, and many months later I checked with my insurance company. No claim had ever been filed. Several years ago, I was relating this story to someone who, after a hearty laugh, said, "You know that was a scam, don't you? That's why they could never turn it over to your insurance. They probably got a list of patients and started manning the phones. They figure if they got 25% of the people to bite, they'd make a pretty good chunk of change." They were probably right. Unlike other things that irritate me to no end, this one had a happy ending. After limping around in pain for 2 years, I went to see an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Knee, as he was known, eager to repeat the success of my first surgery. He was actually a really nice guy, and he showed me on my x-ray that my knee was bone on bone. "How are you even walking?" he said. It's gotta hurt." Nice guess. Then he showed me the bow in my leg. He said that the average bow in your leg is 3 degrees. Mine was 18 degrees. "You probably have lost a little height," he surmised. My thoughts went back to the last annual physical that I had several months prior. The medical assistant had me get up on some contraption to measure my height, and after she told me to stand up straight, which I feebly attempted, she bellowed out, 5'11 and a quarter." 5'11 and a quarter? I said in amazement. "I've been 6'1 and a half my whole adult life." "Well, you're 5'11 and a quarter now." Now it made sense. "So," Dr. Nee said, "when you get sick and tired of walking around on that cane and living with unnecessary discomfort, call the office and we'll get a knee replacement for you." "When I get sick and tired," I replied rather quickly. "Can you do it this afternoon?" Well, after taking a minute to tell me that he couldn't replace my knee that very day, he sent me out to the surgery scheduler who arranged for everything in about 3 weeks' time. I had to get an MRI to measure my leg for the new bionic knee, and in a pre-op physical at my doctor's office, the hospital's way of scamming a few more bucks out of anyone over 60 years old, which I was. On the day of the surgery, Dr. Nee was making the rounds of those he was doing procedures on that day, and it was my turn to go into the operating room. And he said in a serious tone, almost as if it was my last chance to back out, "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Is Springsteen the boss?" I retorted, and to the room I was wheeled. Well, here it is, 2 years later, and I can honestly say that having my right knee replaced was the best thing I ever did. Dr. Nee has since retired, leaving the profitable world of joint replacement for a burgeoning golf habit. Good for him. And here's the best part. In between the first and second surgeries, I went on Medicare and I got a top-notch supplemental policy. The replacement surgery didn't cost a nickel out of my pocket, hassle-free. Oh yeah, and I'm 6'1.5" tall again. Well, that about wraps it up for hospitals and healthcare. Of course, we could have gone on with that all day. There's probably going to be a part two to that at some point in time in the future. Well, here's the part of the video that I ask you to subscribe to this particular YouTube channel. Hit the bell notification so you can be notified to be the first one on your block to have the latest installment of Bean Steamers. We'll see you next week.